Hey, good morning. My name is Mike Lawrence. I'm lead pastor here at Faith Community Church. Yeah, you can say that. That's okay, right? It's a relationship. I'm so glad you're here, lead pastor. We're one church, two campuses here in Hopkinton and Framingham, and we're starting a new series, What Happy Couples Know. And David J. is right. We know nothing, right? But that's part of it, is the humility of understanding that we don't really know what we're getting into when we start a couple relationship. So the material we're going to be using throughout this series was developed by North Point, Andy Stanley, and it really is a series for everyone. Whether you're married or you're dating or you're engaged or you're trying to figure things out or you got relationship issues, you can take some of these principles and apply them to most any relationship. And if you're single, right, you can always think about couples that you know in your life that you can help them discover how the Bible can make their relationship happy. And you know, the struggle when you talk about relationships is that oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, men and women approach relationships differently. I was talking with a friend of mine, a real trusted, she's wise, she's got strong faith, she's a good therapist, and we're talking about this. And we talked, when you think about the way that men and women approach relationships, it's kind of like the way humanity developed. Because men are like hunter and gatherers. We hunt for the relationship and we gather children and we're successful, right? That's in our eyes. But as humanity developed, we became farmers. And women are more like farmers because they understand that if you really want to have a happy relationship, you need to nurture the crop, right? You need to tend to it and to develop it. And guys, I'm going to tell you right now, there is a theme that if there ain't no nurturing, there ain't no pouncing for the hunt, if you know what I'm saying, right? We are going to be talking about sex in 2 weeks. So you should be prepared about that, to come to church and hear your pastor say the word sex, all right? Out loud in front of everybody. Because it's what happy couples know. Sex is involved. But as we develop our relationships, there is a little bit of this idea that emotions are really different for men and for women. For women, emotions, oh my gosh, are like this, right? This is the emotional spectrum of a woman, all right? Now, right? Can I just say that as a guy, when I go to Home Depot or I go to Lowe's and they pull this out, you know what I say? I just want red, right? And for guys, when we approach relationships, we typically have 4 emotions. I'm angry, I'm happy, I'm hungry, I'm bored, right? When a woman approaches relationship, she's got this in her arsenal. Do you have any idea how intimidating this is for us? It's like a guy being caught in an airport in a foreign country and you can't read the signs. You know there's a way out, but you can't find the right exit. So when a woman says, how you feeling? We're like, And women, can I just say, when we say fine, you know what we mean? We're fine, all right? It's all good. That's what we mean. See, because women, you approach relationships differently often, like the problems in relationships, than what men do. And when you have a relational problem, and you're thinking about the marriage, and you want to talk about the marriage, guys have this, we kind of have this theory for a relationship. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? And if we're fine, then the relationship's fine. Why would you tinker with it? Because you know what we've learned in life is that if you try to fix something that you don't know how to fix, you're probably going to make it worse. So when it comes to relationships, our approach is, if it ain't broke, I don't want to fix it, right? But women approach relationships like men approach cars. If we lift the hood and tinker with the engine, we can make it better. Right, guys, when you lift the hood of a relationship, we're like, I'm out of my depth here. I don't know what to do with that. And when we're caught with conflict, here's the thing. It took me years to learn this, so I'm going to give you this lesson in 2 minutes. When a woman has a problem in a relationship, she doesn't want us to fix it, which is mind-boggling to a man. Because you know what that's like to a guy? That's like saying if the car breaks down by the side of the road, you just want to talk about how bad you feel that the car broke down. And a guy's like, we're not going to get home that way. You got to fix the car to get home. So women, you need to know that when you come to a guy and you're like, oh, I'm having this problem with this person at work, his brain goes right to fix it, right? And we want to get into solution mode. We are inept about fixing it, right? And when we look at the problem, we're just thinking to ourselves, okay, she wants me to fix it. Now, Sheila taught me throughout the years, I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to listen to me. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, what good does that do? Because you're just gonna complain about the problem. You're not gonna fix the problem. It's gonna be there tomorrow, and I'm gonna have to listen to you say the same things about the problem tomorrow. But if we fix the problem, tomorrow we could talk about something different, right? And then I realized it's like football. It's like football, guys. Because look, you know how it's like football? How many instant replays do we like to watch about the same play, right? And how do we love to complain about the referee? How many times do we want to talk about the bad call that was made, right? And then how many times do we want to talk for the rest of the week until the next football game about the last football play? Guys, that's how a woman approaches problems in their relationships. So here's the secret, women. Just talk about it like a sport. Here we were in the huddle, and she said, let's go to 110 Grill. And then at the last second, just as we're about to hike the ball and pull the play, she does an audible and turns a pass play into a run play and suggests we go for tie. Foul. And the guy's going to go, I get that. Now I understand your pain because you are now speaking my language. So we're going to talk about relationships. I'm going to share with you some concepts about relationships that I think happy couples know. And there's been a lot of research done on what makes a couple happy. So we're going to look at some things about happy couples. I do want to say, if you're in a conflicted relationship, I mean like a really bad or dysfunctional relationship, that things are tough, you're going to get some insights out of this, but you're going to need some help navigating. Or if you're in the opposite side, if you're in a distant relationship and you can't remember the last time you had a conversation about anything, then you need some help navigating that. And just a simple message isn't going to solve your problems. That's why we have wonderful care ministry with Pastor Bob. Just go to the hub, ask for him. He will fix all your problems, because that's what men do. And he's a guy. You're a guy, you're going to fix it, right? All right. And today's message, the other thing is today's message is in two parts. All right, we're going to dive heavy into the Bible next week. We're going to touch at the Bible at the end of this message, because really it is a two-part message. We don't do that often, but I'm going to do that today because there's a lot to be said about relationships and how we develop. And I want to talk about three things. I think about the box you don't even know that you're carrying when you start a marriage. I want to talk about marriage by contract. And then I want to touch on a revolutionary approach to marriage. Okay? To get started, I want to pray. God, I want to thank you for this opportunity to be here this morning. Lord, we're going to have a lot of fun about something that's really serious. Would you just please infuse it with your Holy Spirit? God, I know that there are wonderful, happy couples in this room. And then I also know, God, there are couples that are really struggling. And then I know that there are singles. Lord, would you somehow do something good in the midst of this whole moment that would be a blessing to everybody? Father, would you speak? We're listening, and I'm asking you to talk through me. You're an awesome God. I just love you. And I think marriage is amazing. It's an amazing way to tell the world about that. Speak, I pray. Amen. So I used to do premarital years ago. Now Pastor Dorian oversees premarital as part of his ministry. And I used to say to people that when you get married, I lost all my hope. No, I found it. My hope is right here. See how easy it is? Your hope is right there. Your hope may not stick, though. There's my hope right there, okay? When we approach a marriage, we bring a box with us. This box is all your hopes, all your dreams, all your ambitions that you've kind of learned about through life. You learn stuff from your own family that you grew up in. You learned it from watching TV and movies and reading books as you projected forward into your future about this wonderful relationship that you're going to have. And in it is all your hopes and all your dreams and all your ambitions, all your expectations, what you think will make for a happy marriage. And it's all in here. There's all sorts of stuff. In here is your budget. Money's in here in this box. As you approach marriage, because you're approaching marriage and you're thinking to yourself like, well, like a budget. A budget is a spreadsheet, and we need to account for every penny. We need to know where every single penny goes in our spending. And for others, spreadsheet, in order to have a happy marriage, is just kind of like guidelines. As long as I get close to the target, I'm fine. Or you approach it like you think about, well, money's for fun. Right? I save up money so I can spend it on fun stuff like vacations or large screen TVs or my wardrobe. And for others, no. Money's for the future. Money's for like the unexpected expenses or for retirement. We don't spend it on that frivolous stuff. Or you come into a marriage and you're thinking to yourself, credit cards, right? As long as I can make the monthly payment, credit cards are for spending. I can buy it on sale and I'll save money. But someone else comes into a marriage and the credit card they think is, no. No, they actually charge you interest for your money. And by the time you pay it off, you didn't get the deal anymore. So we're not going to use a credit card in our marriage. That's what makes us happy. Or we think about time management. If I'm going to have a happy marriage, right, you're thinking, well, I got to work long hours in order to supply for my family's needs. But then someone else, your spouse, come into marriage with her box and her box. You say, yeah, but if you're not spending time at home, you're not going to have a happy marriage, right? Or Sheila and I learned this. In my box is nighttime because I'm a night owl. I stay up late. In Sheila's box is morning person. Right? And so in my mind, if we want to have a happy marriage, we spend our time together at nighttime. In her mind, if we want to have a happy marriage, we start our day off together. The problem in our marriage is that I am not a nice person before I finish my cup of coffee. We are not going to have happiness. Happiness is in a warm cup of coffee that fills your husband. So we learned that in the morning, she would look in my cup before she would ask a question. And I learned to buy a Kindle to read it next to her in bed, right? So that I didn't keep her awake at night. We learned what happiness meant. Sometimes happiness in here is the chores, right? You can't wait to get married, so he will shovel your driveway, because that's what men are supposed to do. I can't wait to get married because I want her to do my laundry, right? Because I don't wash clothes. I throw them away and I buy something to replace it. You know what I'm saying? And when you come together, there can be a little bit of conflict about that, right? Hey, men don't cook until you taste your food. And you go, well, maybe I'll learn, you know? Or you think to yourself, women don't do home repair until you call the service person. And you think to yourself, ladies, I'm going to learn how to repair things, you know? You just start to figure things out, but it's an important bucket. Our first fight was in this bucket. It was over this, right? Because we came into our marriage together, and Sheila knew that happy couples use Colgate because that's what her mom used, and that's what her mom bought. For me, happy couples use Crest, right? That's what I knew growing up. And so our first argument was over happiness in a toothpaste. Now, it seems so silly, right? But that's just the way it is. You come into a relationship and you have a bucket full of stuff, all that you've accumulated throughout your lifetime. The products that your parents bought, right? The dreams and expectations that you have, the things that you used to do as a family that you think are great, and the stuff you used to do that you want to avoid, because it is all your personal experience in your bucket. And you want to replicate some of this stuff. Right? You want to replicate what's really important to you, because in your past, it was so important that we went camping every summer. And if we're going to be happy, we should go camping. And she's thinking, I loved going to the city. That makes me my happy place. Right? But you want to replicate some of the things of your past. You know, we always put up our Christmas tree at 4th of July. You know? And that made us happy. And I want to do that because out of my past, these are the things I want to bring into my marriage. Or you want to avoid the things that were really disastrous because in your bucket is this idea that yelling led to a really horrible experience. And so we're never going to yell. That's in my bucket. But maybe in her bucket is we don't talk about feelings. Because when we ever talked about feelings in my family, it went south fast. So in my bucket is the don't talk about feelings idea. Okay? And then some of this stuff, if you're like me, you had to learn it by observation because you didn't grow up with it much. You know, it was distant parents, or maybe it was a single parent, or maybe you were on your own as a foster kid or whatever. And some of this stuff is just projected. You watched other people, you think to yourself, well, they were affectionate, so I'm going to put that in my happiness box. My hopes, my dreams, my expectations are that we're going to be affectionate. Or maybe, hey, they had some shared hobbies, and so in my box is going to be hobbies we're going to do together. Right? Or maybe they had their own hobbies, and so I'm putting in my box, I get my own hobbies and you get your own hobbies. Right? But there's a box that you bring into your marriage thing. Now, when you get married, you get a new box. This is my box, and this is our box. This box represents me. In my box are things like, I want more education. I want a bigger home. I want to live in the city. I want to live closer to my family. I want to sit as far away from my family as I can be and still be in America, right? It's in your box. And when you approach it, you're thinking to yourself, what are you going to do? Well, when you get married and you get this new box, now you got to figure out what's going to go from my box into this box. This is my box. This is our box. But here's the thing. You can't just dump this box into that box because now there's no room for your spouse's box, right? So you can't fit both boxes into one box. And not just that, but some of these stuff in your box and some of the stuff in your spouse's box are like polar opposite boxes. Like my parents slept in separate beds. My parents slept in the same bed. Those don't fit in the same box, right? Or, my parents worked off of one checkbook, and no, my parents shared the same checkbook. You can't put that in there. That's like trying to put polar opposite magnet ends together, and it repels. It doesn't fit that way. But so you got three boxes. My box, your box, our box. And happy couples have to figure out what are we going to put into our box. Now, here's the thing. There's a concept I call contract marriage, right? Because sometimes people want to approach this box and they want to say, this is my box, okay? There are things in here that are important to me. And so we're going to negotiate what goes into this box. We're going to create a contract. We're going to approach it like a business. Because, we kind of get the idea. If I take this box and I just give it to my wife to carry, now she's carrying her box in my box, and marriage feels like a burden. We don't want to do that, right? We want one box that we both carry because then marriage isn't a burden. But in a contract approach to marriage, you start to approach the relationship usually with one of four approaches. In a contract marriage where we're sitting down and we're thinking about it like we would approach a business or something, and you get this box and you're trying to put your hopes, your dreams, your ambitions, each you put in this box, but then you find the polar opposites are in the box or things aren't working. There were hidden things in the box that you didn't know were in the box. There's the hidden thing like exercise fixation or an eating addiction. Or maybe inside that box is anger problems, right? Inside that box. And you're trying to figure out, and suddenly you get to a place and you're thinking, you know what? I didn't sign up for this. I didn't know that was in your box. You didn't tell me that was in your box. Now you're trying to fit into our box, and I don't want that in that box. That's not fair. You didn't tell me that. You didn't reveal it. You kept it hidden. You know what you did? You broke the contract, right? And the contract's now dissolved. I'm going to leave. That's what we're saying. I'm going to leave because you broke the contract. I remember when Sheila and I got engaged and she was finishing up college and, this guy that kind of liked her was saying like, well, you're kind of young to be married. He's playing all the game that he's trying to play, right, to pull her attention away. And then finally he says, he goes, you know what, don't worry about it. Go ahead, get married, and if it doesn't work out, you'll just get divorced and you'll just get another marriage. He had the I leave when you break the contract approach. Some people do that. They string of broken marriages, right? The struggle you get, though, right, is like, you know that whatever's in your box and you take it to the next relationship, if you don't clean out this box, you know what you're doing? You're bringing all that stuff that's in your box into the next relationship. That's the problem, right? There is a second approach to a contract relationship, and that second approach is usually it's what I call the I win approach. If you want to win in a marriage, try one of these 4 things. The I win is, I get my way, my box now becomes our box, right? And when you try to do that by convincing, you try to say, no, my box is better than your box. So we should keep the stuff that's in my box, because my box is filled with the stuff that makes couples happy. It made my parents happy. So I'm certain it will make us happy. So let's just think this through carefully. You use a lot of words, you use a lot of logic, you use a lot of persuasion, and the whole point is you're just trying to convince a person, we will be happy if we follow this career path. I know, because I'll be happy, and if I'm happy, then we'll be happy. Right? Or the person who likes to win is a person who uses a lot of convicting by making people feel guilty. No. We don't have to hunt. You can rip my heart out. It's okay. Just because it was my fondest memories of my dad. It's what I've been doing since I was 12. I've invested thousands of dollars into that equipment. You can leave that out of our box. I'll be fine. Right? That's you're just trying to, or you're sitting there and I've seen this one before. This boss is like, well, you know what? I was listening to what Pastor Mike said. Can I ask one thing as your pastor? Leave me out of your relationship. All right? So we try to convict, or sometimes we just try to control. So you know what? I got it. I have both boxes and I'll figure it out. This is, it's like, you know what? Hey, I bought the tickets for our vacation. Hey, I just bought us the car. Hey, I got the checkbook. Don't worry about it. You just ask me and I'll tell you how things are at. This is when you just seize control and you win because you just take over things. Or, winning sometimes is about coercing. So I've been praying about this decision, and I think God is saying, how do you do it? I remember I had some friends that were pastors, and we made the decision together that we would never go to our wives and say, hey, we've been praying about ministry opportunities, and this one came before me. Because you know what our wives always heard? God has led this opportunity in front of me. What do you think I should do? What's she going to do, say no to God? So we said we would bring the opportunities to each other, so our wives would never have to say no to God, because we learned that we were coercing our spouses when we talked that. Anyway, it's the winning approach. The other approach is the lose approach. This is the flip side of the control approach. This is where you constantly give in. You're like, no, we don't have to put that in our box. That's okay. That's not important to me. We don't need to have pets. That's okay. That's not important to me. Now, we can give up meat. That's okay. I'll just keep that in my box. You know what? That's fine. I don't need to get a truck. You just go ahead. You do that. You know what? You're right. I don't need to buy any more clothes. I'm certain that I have enough. And what you do is you just keep doing it because it works. It keeps the temperature down in the relationship. You don't argue as much. You don't have to hear about how your way is always inferior. Often the I lose and the I win end up being in the same household, right? But you know what happens? You end up losing respect. The irony is, you end up losing respect for yourself, and the winner loses respect for the loser. And so the marriage kind of like begins to just kind of fall apart a little bit. And what's really sad that I've seen happen at times is one of those spouses die, all of a sudden the person who spent their life losing comes alive. Or they don't know what to do. And either way is sad, right? Or sometimes in a contract relationship. You get the I leave, you get the I win, I get the I lose, you get the I compromise, which sounds pretty good because compromise is an important skill to bring into life and into business. But marriage isn't a business. And if we spend our life compromising, it becomes a bartering system in which we begin to keep track. What do you do when you work on compromising for a contract? You're trying to make sure you don't lose. And you're trying to make sure that you gain. But you hear that you're entering into a marriage saying, I want to make sure I don't lose and I want to make sure that I gain. Now, I'm fine with minimizing your losses, but I don't want to minimize mine. I want to minimize my losses. I'll try to minimize yours, but my goal is to gain out of this. Because the compromise approach is kind of a bargaining approach in which you start to flex almost like a tally sheet. You know, okay, we went to your parents last year for Christmas. This year's my parents' turn for Christmas. I get that your dad is sick, but come on. Or what you do is you're like, all right, we can go to your parents' house this Christmas, but that means this year we're going to need to do the summer vacation that I planned. You're constantly thinking, all right, you want to buy that TV? That's great, because in your mind you're thinking about, well, I really wanted to buy this. So you're kind of, every time a decision's coming up, you're thinking through your head, what is it going to cost me and what can I gain out of it? That's kind of a contract approach. The thing is, there's a lot of I in compromise. Technically, there's only one in the word, but what I'm trying to say is, there's a lot of myself in compromise because I am constantly thinking about a zero-sum game. Right? I'm constantly thinking about, okay, this may cost me, but what can I gain out of it? And so we approach relationships, and some of us know that, right? The struggle with this type of contractual approach to marriages is all about debt and debtor. Right? Debt and debtor. It's what you owe me and what I can get from you. That's what a contract approach is. You leave because a person took too much debt from you. You win thinking you're gaining, but you don't understand the debt that you're accruing. You lose by giving up too much and you're constantly in debt. Or a compromise is all about keeping track of what's owed you. Can I just say a contract approach to marriage typically produces resentment. You begin to resent the other person for what they're taking from you. Because it's all focused on what's owed you. You don't have gratitude in a contract relationship. Because think about it, when you go to a restaurant, are you really filled with gratitude because the waiter brought your food? No, it's what they're paid to do. It's what you expect them to do. What happens is you get upset when they don't deliver your food on time or it's wrong. You're constantly looking at the failure point, not at the success point in a contract relationship. You know, that's the idea that in a contract marriage, you may get flowers on your birthday, but that's what you expected. That's the contract agreement. So you're not grateful for it. You're only angry when it doesn't come through the right way. See, that's a contract. But there's another approach. There's a fifth one, and we're going to really dive into it next week. I call the fifth approach the unconditional love approach. And this is what happy couples know, is that a happy marriage is built on unconditional love. And we don't have the time to kind of break that down, but it's the way that Jesus loved. The unconditional love approach to me is built on the way that Jesus loved. And we'll take this apart again next week, but just give you a heads up, because I get it. To ask you to wait a whole week is like waiting for the next Avengers movie to come out, right? It's like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. So let's just touch on this. So this is on the last night that Jesus was alive, and Jesus is talking to his friends, his disciples. And he says, as the Father has loved me, so I've loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love. Well, that sounds like a contract. Just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. Well, that sounds like a contract, right? Except Jesus goes on to say, I told you this so that my joy might be in you and that your joy might be complete. And here's the command. He says, if you want to remain in my love, keep this one command. Love each other the way I've loved you. Well, that's not a contract suddenly. Because see, look at how he defines that type of love. He says, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. And you're my friends if you do what I command. It's a cyclical approach. It's like a symbiotic relationship. It's like, here it is. You want to stay in, Jesus said, you want to stay in a good relationship with me? Follow my commands. Here's my command. Just love me the way I love you. And you know what this type of love is? We're going to call it the submission competition. This is the type of love that says, what do you need? What can I do for you? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? What are your ambitions? How can I support you? It isn't about what I get from you, it's what I give to you. It's not about what you owe me, it's about what I get to provide for you. This is the unconditional love approach to relationships, which doesn't pay attention to contracts anymore. It pays attention to people. And the church grabbed this idea and changed the world. The very first church built everything off of this idea. We see it in the writings next week we'll look at from this Paul, one of the great leaders of the church. He wrote this to one church in a letter. He goes, live a life filled with love, following the example of Christ. Look at, and then he goes right where Jesus went. He goes, he loved us and offered himself as a sacrifice for us, a pleasing aroma to God. And then what Paul's going to do next week, he's going to show you what a marriage is like. A whole household is like when unconditional love fills your house. When your approach to marriage isn't about what do we do here? How do we get a zero-sum game? What do I get out of it? What do you give to me? Instead, this approach that Paul's going to talk about is when you come into a marriage and he says, I want to love you the way Jesus loved me. Totally in. All on the table. Here's my box. You get to go through it. Let me take a look at your box. Whatever I need to do to help you become the person God's created, that's the type of relationship I want to build. And that type of relationship is a supernatural relationship that only can be achieved through the love of God that we find in Jesus Christ. So here's what we're going to do. Put all my hopes, dreams, ambitions here. Thank you, Allie, for carrying them for me. What a servant, right? It is your joy. No, let's be honest, you're in church. Okay. Here's a couple of questions for you to think about this week. I just want to give you a couple of questions to think about, because this is what I call counterintuitive to our culture. The world doesn't approach relationships like this, right? So I don't want you to talk to your spouse about this. I just want you to think about these two questions, all right? First question, where are you leaning into a contract marriage? Is there a place in your life and in your marriage where you're kind of approaching it, thinking to yourself, what do I get when they ask me for something? Are there places you're making decisions with this type of negotiation? You know, or do you feel like you're always on the lose side, or do you kind of feel like you've been on the win side, or are you ready to leave? Just ask that one question. And here's a real important question. That's why I don't want you to ask your spouse. I want you to really stop and think, what has your spouse been saying to you? If you ask your spouse this question right now, they're going to be really mad, because they're going to look at you and say, you haven't been listening. If you have to ask me that question, you probably haven't been listening. So in the course of this week, just start listening. What is my spouse saying to me? And what does that say to me about the type of marriage that we've been forming? God, I pray that in the course of this week, that those questions would become meaningful to us as we begin to explore this, so that the marriage that we're looking for is a marriage, God, that makes us happy. Because, God, what do we want? Marriages that make us miserable? We pray for happy marriages filled with the unconditional love of Jesus Christ. We're not really good at it, so would you please lead us and help us to just begin thinking carefully about what you have to say.